As a pursuit of knowledge, surely of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever. Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist at the museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
The views expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its employees, or ownership.
I'm on? Okay, I want my clip played.
I think it's in the book of Deuteronomy where God says that any man who lays down with another man should be killed.
Be stoned.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look through the Bible, you'll notice in the patriarchal age, in the Mosaic age, and in the New Testament, God's view against homosexuality does not change. He is against that kind of immoral behavior. And for us to be living in the year 2007 and to think that it's acceptable, that it's okay, man, we are really undercutting the idea that God is immutable, that He doesn't change. I suspect every viewer out there has forgotten the fact that somewhere on this planet there are several inches of burnt sulfur where God has burned down a couple of cities for a sin that we now feel comfortable enough to put on primetime television and promote in a glamorous lifestyle.
Yes, sir. I was just going to say that I thought that was a bit archaic, you know, the whole stoning thing. I think we should just hang him. Yes, sir. I was just going to say that I thought that was a bit archaic, you know, the whole stoning thing. I think we should just hang him. Yes, sir. I was just going to say that I thought that was a bit archaic, you know, the whole stoning thing. I think we should just hang him. Yes, sir. I was just going to say that I thought that was a bit archaic, you know, the whole stoning thing. I think we should just hang him. Yes, sir. I was just going to say that I thought that was a bit archaic, you know, the whole stoning thing. I think we should just hang him. Yes, sir. I was just going to say that I thought that was a bit archaic, you know, the whole stoning thing. I think we should just hang him. 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 I think it's in the book of Deuteronomy.
Good evening, folks. I'm Larry Surber, for those of you that don't know. I hope you watch this very closely. This man is a good man of God, he says. The Bible, 6,000-year-old earth, is going to try to demonize me tonight because I'm a religious skeptic. Because I'm a non-theistic person, he's going to say, ooh, atheist. An atheist is non-theistic, means he doesn't believe in a God. I'm assuming Brad Harrub is an a-goblinist and an a-leprechaunist. He just believes in one more God than me. But can you believe this man? This is a man that's got a nice sport coat and tie and a nice brushed hairdo. And he's going to look at you tonight and tell you he's a fine person and I don't have any objective carved in stone God values. And what does he do when a man suggests killing, murdering a gay man? He laughs, a big toothy grin, looks like Bucky Beaver, just laughs and laughs. And you might say, well, I took that out of context. I didn't. You can watch the whole thing, and he is saying that that's the way God is. He says God is immutable. And Johnny Robertson and Brad Harrub totally disagree. They 100% disagree. I called Johnny the other day, or he called me, and I said, why aren't you still stoning homosexuals? He said, you don't understand. We have a new constitution, a new dispensation of Jesus. We don't do it anymore. But Brad said, oh, no, that's stoning. God's laws don't change. They're immutable. I looked up immutable in the top dictionary in the world, or at least in the English language, the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, and it said not subject to change or even susceptible to change. That means something can never change. So when God decreed in the Old Testament that if a man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, you got to stone him to death. And Brad Harrub thinks that's funny. This man thinks that's funny. Murder. I say Johnny and Brad are both wrong. The only reason these guys quit stoning homosexuals is because good, secular, honest people fought against them and finally got some decency and made it against the law to stone homosexuals to death. That's the only reason they stopped. These guys are dangerous. I was debating James Oldfield one time, and he started talking about Phineas. I don't know how many of you know about Phineas in the Bible. It's in Numbers 25, 7, and 8. He was saying that Phineas was a righteous man, an honorable man. And what it was, Moses had told the Israelites not to have sexual intercourse with some other ites, I don't know, Canaanites, Ammonites, Amalekites, whoever they were. And some people, the Israelite people, saw this Israelite man go into a tent with a woman from this other tribe, and they were fornicating. So Phineas took his javelin up out of the ground, it's like a long spear, went over and jammed it right through the man's back, out his stomach, through the woman's stomach, and out her back, and pinned him to the ground. These people are dangerous, folks. James Oldfield said Phineas was a righteous man. He obeyed the authority of God. They never questioned the authority of God. This is what makes them crazy. This is what makes a religious fanatic crazy. Brad Harrub's a religious fanatic. So is Jeffrey Rose. So is Johnny Robertson. They are religious fanatics, and that's why you've always heard a religious fanatic is dangerous. Brad Harrub believes in witches. I know he does because he says the Bible's 100% true, and it says thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Since the Pope in the 1400s said that they were going to burn witches and hang witches, the Benet's Reader's Encyclopedia estimates that more than 9 million women and girls have been killed for being witches. As Mark Twain said, we know today there's no such thing as a witch, and there never was. We don't know whether to laugh or cry. All these people were killed. Religious fanatics like Brad Harrub, you're going to see tonight. He's going to talk so much about us evolutionists and scientists. I don't consider him a scientist. He doesn't use the scientific method. He's got a PhD in neurobiology from the University of Tennessee Medical School. Sounds very impressive. I don't know how many papers he writes. I think he spends quite a bit of time going around doing things like he's doing tonight. But I in no way consider him a scientist because the scientific method says you start out with an open mind, you form hypotheses, you take careful measurements, you do experiments. He made his decision a long time ago. It's called a priori. He's decided that Yahweh, the Jew God, is real. The Bible is his dictated word that's 100% accurate, immutable. Again, remember, it never changes. That's no way to do science. I don't care how prissy he looks up there in his little tie and tells you, it grins and tells you how bad we are, how Jeffrey Rowe tells you, tells you how bad we are. These people are dangerous fanatics. There was a man named Giordano Bruno. He agreed with Copernicus back in the 1500s that the Earth was not the center of the universe, that the Earth was just one of several planets that went around the sun. For agreeing with Copernicus and not agreeing with one of the Psalms that said the Earth is fixed forever, they burned Giordano Bruno at the stake. Religious fanatics killing a good scientist. As I said, Johnny and Brad are diametrically polarized over the idea of whether we should still be stoning gays or not. Religious fanatics. Colonel John Chivington, back during the 1800s, was a Methodist minister and an officer in the cavalry, the U.S. Army. He was a fanatic about exterminating the Indians, all of them, even the little babies. And he said, nits make lice. You know the little lice eggs that get on human hairs when they have head lice? He said, nits make lice, meaning little Indian babies will grow up to be Indians that will be bad. I brought a copy of the Declaration of Independence. Charles runs a commercial for Charles runs a commercial for the new True Value hardware store up in Ridgeway, and the lady said, "Bet you didn't know we had that. Bet you didn't know we had this." Well, I bet you people didn't know in the Declaration of Independence there's a part here that says, "The merciless Indian savages." Did you know that your Declaration of Independence is so racist? They talk about Charles Darwin being racist, and he was a kind man. He hated slavery. He was an abolitionist. Just absolutely hated slavery. That's the kind of racist he was. He also said all of us are Homo sapiens and we should treat people that look different skin color equally. So they twist things. They tell about half the story, just enough to make them look good. But that's in the Declaration of Independence, and this John Chivington was saying that they need to exterminate the Indians, including the kids. Jamestown, if you missed one Sabbath service, you lost a week's food. Missed two, you got a public flogging, beating. If you missed
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist in the museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever. Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist in the museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
I want to thank Larry for agreeing to show up with me and having this debate on the existence of God. And I want to start out by letting him know I've been praying for him, and I hope that he will sincerely listen to what I'm saying. And I'll go ahead and make sure he understands I don't think anything special of myself. In fact, I think I'm a sinner in the need of the blood of Jesus Christ. This debate is on the existence of God, and I want to start by asking Larry a question, a simple question. Question is it impossible for God to exist? Now, as you're thinking about that, I want to talk to you for just a moment about why we're even having the debate. What's the big deal? The big deal is if there is no God, then quite literally we're here by accident. Your life has no purpose. But if there is a God, then in fact you do have a purpose. And yet, as you think about it, these two worldviews are diametrically opposed. Take a look at what James Dobson said. He wrote a book recently called Children at Risk. He said, nothing short of a great civil war of values rages today throughout North America. He said, two sides with vastly differing and incompatible worldviews are locked in a bitter conflict that permeates every level of society. And that's where we are this evening. I want to make sure that you understand, Larry has claimed to believe in a worldview of hard science, real hard science. In fact, what he says is he wants things that he can test, that he can prove, that he can measure. In fact, I brought his own words. I don't want you thinking that I'm misquoting him. So take just a moment and listen to what Larry has to say about his belief system.
Anyway, we are here tonight to talk about two different worldviews. My view
is the view of pure hard science. Johnny's view is the view of Jesus, God, the Bible. I say there's no way the two can get along because science is about reality, things we can prove and test and measure and feel and see. I say that religion in the Bible is a great deal about things that are not real.
You heard him say pure, hard science. Now, if that's the case, then maybe Larry can help us to understand his very existence in conducting this debate. How did he get here? Where did the matter for Larry Surber actually come from? You see, I do want to debate Larry, and I want to do it nicely, but I want to make sure he understands that if we're going to talk science, I'm ready to talk science. Let's talk for just a moment about that Big Bang. What do we know about that Big Bang? Or better yet, what do we not know? He's saying he wanted to look at some pure hard science. You think about it for just a moment. Folks who don't believe in a God, they bought into this idea that we came from a cosmic explosion, but how many times do they actually tell us where the original matter came from? So, Larry, tonight, what I want us to do is I want us to prove, to test, to measure, to see about your worldview. Where'd the universe come from, Larry? What exactly is it you believe? Because if you believe in the atheistic view that there is no God and that everything came from a Big Bang, I want you to understand very clearly what you're having to do is set aside all of these scientific laws. Laws like, for instance, the law of cause and effect, the first law of thermodynamics, laws like the law of biogenesis. Now, let me make sure all the viewers understand something. Scientific laws don't become laws just by chance. They become scientific laws because they've never been disproven. And yet, as we look through all of these various scientific laws, his Big Bang requires us to set them aside. The law of cause and effect. We know there's a universe. What caused it? The first law of thermodynamics, creating matter for the Big Bang. You look at the Hubble law of cosmic expansion, a law that tells us that things are expanding. By the way, that means we have a beginning, that this thing is not eternal. The law of biogenesis, that life only comes from other life. All of these scientific laws, this man who says he believes in pure hard science is having to set aside. By the way, Larry, if there really was a Big Bang, let me ask you the question, who pulled the trigger? Or what pulled the trigger for that Big Bang? Larry wants proof from my God, and this evening I want to give him some scientific proof. And in order to do that, I'm going to use a tactic that R.C. Sproul has used in the past. I think we would all agree that my shoe does exist. There are only three options for where my shoe came from. Either it is eternal, it popped into existence from nothing, or it was created. Now, if you look at my shoe carefully, you recognize it's not eternal. It is definitely wearing out. I don't think that Larry's going to be illogical enough to say that I was just walking along in socked feet and boom, there was a size 11 and a half. No, I think you would agree that my shoe was created. Now, Larry, let's talk about that shoemaker. Where did he come from? Is the shoemaker eternal? Did he pop into existence from nothing, or was he created? You see, you can take this argument all the way back to the beginning of the universe, telling us that something is eternal. That's what we're really debating. That something that has been here forever. Now, he may not like my math, but take a look for just a moment. Something exists today. Thus, something must be eternal and has always existed. In fact, the fact that something is eternal means it violates scientific laws, the observable laws of naturalistic science. Number three, something violates scientific laws, thus it exists outside of the observable laws. Larry,
Something's eternal. And tonight, what we're debating is that something. I want to leave you with this question, Larry. Can you give me any empirical evidence for explosions, that is a big bang, producing states of more order or complexity? Has there ever been, scientifically speaking, because you're a man of pure hard science, and you want to measure, you want to see, you want to feel it. So getting back to the scientific method, can you show me any explosion that has actually produced order or more complexity? Because that's precisely what your belief system is. You see, friends, I believe Larry's universe is different from mine and yours. Larry has to believe that everything came from nothing by nothing. And quite literally, we went from chaos to order. Friends, that's not hard science. That's a fairy tale. Tonight, we're dealing with the existence of God, and there's a lot on the line. And I hope and I pray that as this debate goes on, that Larry will not only think about the evidence for the existence of God, but he'll also think about what happens to a nation that is without a God. Appreciate very much you tuning in. I hope you'll call your friends. Hope you'll invite your neighbors. Check us out online.
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
Brad asked something. Everything he said that I've studied and haven't heard him say it before. He said, has anything orderly ever come out of an explosion? I've heard him say this. If you have a pile of bricks and you put dynamite under them and blow them up, do you get a house? What a silly, childish question. Of course you don't. But if you take a sperm and an egg and apply energy to them, what do you get in 9 months? You get a very orderly progression. This is a painting of a human cell. Brad Harrub is in biology. He knows about the human cell. Very complex little factory of the human cell. You put a sperm and egg together, and in 9 months you get a human made of 1 trillion of these little cells. It's got all kinds of things, mitochondria, a nucleus and everything. And so yes, order can come from things with something like an explosion, the explosion of energy making a person along a natural template. Now, what is Johnny Robertson and Brad Harrub's explanation for how people came here? God, who's not even made of matter, he's ethereal like a ghost, you know, that can put its finger through a piano key and not even push it down. God breathed his, I don't know how he transferred energy from his ethereal self onto air to move the molecules, but he somehow blew his breath onto dust, and instantaneously, wham, bam, like Cinderella's fairy godmother making a coach, bam, alakazam, you got a man made of 1 trillion cells. And then God puts Adam, after he decides he doesn't have any animals fit for him for a mate, he puts Adam under kind of a general anesthesia, takes out one of his ribs, and makes a woman with 1 trillion cells instantly. Crazy Mighty Mouse cartoon idiocy. And as far as the Big Bang, I don't know. Brad Harrub certainly doesn't know. We weren't around back then. I tend to believe that the basic 92 elements of the universe have been around for all time. I tried to tell Johnny one time that there was hydrogen on the sun. You know what that guy did? He shouted me down. I said, look, we can see the hydrogen in your elbow, the hydrogen, the simplest atom in your elbow is just like the hydrogen atoms in the sun. He shouted me down. He said, how do you know? Have you ever been to the sun? How do you know? Answer the question. Have you ever been to the sun? How do you know? And then when I came on this show standing right here this past summer, I pointed that out. And Johnny said, well, let's let the community look at the clip and see if I shouted you down. And you know what the guy did? You know what he did? He played a different clip. Man, how much more dishonest did you get? He had shouted me down. It's too bad he shouted me down because I could have explained to him about the spectrograph, the spectroscope. You shine the light from a star into a spectroscope, and it's got like Newton's prism. It breaks the light into the electromagnetic spectrum, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And then across that spectrum, if there's hydrogen or sodium or some other element there, you get a barcode, like black lines on a colored background. Sometimes it's complicated because sometimes it's colored lines on a black background. I don't know if Brad Harrub has ever used a spectroscope. And sometimes you have interference where there's more than one element, and you have to use some differential equations. I know Brad Harrub, I had to take differential equations as my last math course when I was at NC State. I had to take 3 semesters of calculus and analytic geometry. I had to take advanced calculus. And, of course, being in mechanical engineering, I had to take differential equations. I've got a differential equation here that I'm going to ask Brad to solve for me, by the way. I sure hope he can, because Johnny's already said Brad's my superior in every way. And I could solve this, and it's going to be so funny to see him solve it. Maybe he can. Maybe he'll surprise me. But anyway, this thing about origin, about the Big Bang, I think the matter has probably always been there. But our minds, being human, we cannot understand infinity. All of our yardsticks, or dare I say meter stick. Here in America, you people don't use meter sticks, do you? But they all have 2 ends. They've got this end and this end. And so people don't like to think of infinity. Our minds aren't really capable of it. Before I go further, I want to share something with you people. I hope you can read this. I'm getting as close as I can. If you go online, you can go to www, that's World Wide Web, .youtube.com /user/concordance/video. Go to this. Those of you that have computers, go to that site. You might want to write this down if you've got a pencil and paper there with. I always tell people to tape the shows I'm on, so when they're eating breakfast at Dick's Drive-In or Biscuitville the next morning, and they're talking about that nut non-believer and what he said, I'd like them to at least say what I actually said rather than what you think you remember me saying. I noticed lately Johnny Robertson's got a terrible problem remembering what I actually said. And I'd like for you to know exactly what Brad Harrub said, too. And when you get to that site, click on Rebutting Brad Harrub. It's really good. It's some real scientists. They're very calm. They're not wild like me that just get so excited and upset. They're real calm. And they'll tell you about things like Brad talking about Darwin being a racist and other areas. I think there's 7 areas that they explain about Brad and Jeffrey's thing that they do call the truth about origins. Now, Brad talks on his DVDs about real scientists who were also creationists and believers in Yahweh, the Jew God. And he mentions Isaac Newton. And I'm going to agree with Brad. Isaac Newton was probably the greatest scientist who ever lived. And it's also true that he had religious orientation. But he lived from 1642 on up, and back in those days, it's pretty unsafe to even admit you didn't have religious views because you'd get killed for it. Isn't that something? These religious people with their God and their higher moral standard, life's meaningless if you don't have this. They'd kill you for not believing it. By the way, Brad said a while ago, without God or something, some creator, Larry's life is meaningless. No, it's not. My life is very meaningful. I know when my brain disassembles, I'm going to die. I'm not like Johnny Robertson. I'm not going to the happy hunting ground. When my brain disassembles, we know enough about brains and minds to know there's never been any evidence of a mind where there was not a brain. And your mind, your personality develops day by day in your brain. Brad Harrub says this on his Origins, Truth About Origins. So when my mind disassembles, I'm going to... Now, don't get me wrong, folks. I would love to live 300 years. I love life. I enjoy my life so much. I'm excited all the time. I ride my motorcycle. I go to my woodworking shop. I play with my grandchildren. I raise my pet assassin bugs that I love like a puppy. I'm into all kinds of things. But I know I am going to die. When my brain rots, I'm not going to continue to exist. But you say, is my wife, my wife's sitting out in the lobby. She's going to say, is my life meaningless because there is no afterlife? Just because it comes to an end? No way. I'm going tomorrow afternoon to the Blue Naples, my favorite restaurant, and I'm going to eat a delicious meal with grilled shrimp on a salad and blue cheese dressing and a stromboli with steak. I'm going to have a blast. Next week, when my grandsons, I've got one that's 12, one that's 14, and one that's 15, when they get back from the beach, they're coming to spend a week with us, and man, am I happy. I've got a reason to live, Brad. I don't need your happy hunting ground. That is just so stupid and childish to say, well, without your God in the sky, you're, I'm going to say Brad doesn't believe in most of the gods. He doesn't believe in Zeus. He doesn't believe in Apollo or Neptune. He knows they were all made up. But this one in the Bible's 100% true to him. It's literal. It's infallible. And you can show all kinds of contradictions in the Bible. One of the funniest things, you show the story of Judas Iscariot. In one of the Gospels, Judas, he betrays Jesus and he feels so bad he hangs himself. And then over in the Acts, it says he plunged headlong and his guts burst out. And you ask Johnny Robertson or somebody like that, and I imagine Brad Harrub too, they got the most hilarious explanation for that. Well, it could be both. He was way up high, and the rope rotted and broke, and he somehow did a half gainer and turned the head down and splattered. No. The Bible doesn't say it happened here when he was remorseful about betraying Jesus, and then time passed over here for a rope to rot. It just gives two different descriptions. These people cannot stand the contradictions in the Bible. The Bible's full of them. The writers, and they were just ignorant desert men. This was not an inspired God like a man. The people that wrote the Bible in the Genesis story, they didn't even know what caused day and night. That's why God didn't think to make the sun until the third day.
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever. Well, the Bible's not a history book.
So, again, I want to thank Larry. And let me reassure Larry that my math skills, I didn't like math much in school. I got through calculus. That's all I needed to go to post-grad work. And that's all it took. But I do want to point out to Larry, whether or not I can solve a math equation doesn't have a whole lot to do with whether or not there's a God. You notice he's kind of avoiding evidence. He did mention a cell, and I appreciated him bringing a picture of that. He mentioned that the cell actually will turn into a human, trillions of cells, and that's proof for him of evolution. Now, interesting, when you think about it, you start with a human cell. And what do you end up with? You end up with a human. So maybe Larry can help me understand exactly where the evolution was. You see, what that is simply microevolution. Actually, it's not even microevolution. It's simply a human being growing into an adult. And yet, we're supposed to take a baby in the womb, developing into a human being as his proof for evolution. Folks, when you listen to his own words, in fact, I'm going to play a section from where he was ridiculing a preacher here, Johnny Robertson. He was talking about this very thing. Listen carefully to what he says for support of his belief system.
Now, Johnny Robertson doesn't believe that complex things can come from simple things. And listen to this very closely, because this is important. Johnny Robertson doesn't believe in Darwinian evolution. He doesn't believe simple things can evolve into complex things just purely by the forces of blind nature. But I've got news for Johnny. he did it himself. Are you hearing me, Johnny? He did it himself. He was in his mother's womb, one cell, an egg. His father's sperm fertilized that egg. And from then on, he was on the way from going to a single cell to a zygote, a blastocyst, an embryo, a fetus, and finally a human with 1 trillion cells. 1 trillion of those cells that was on the screen earlier, that complex human cell. Johnny went from one
So
cell.
this is his description of evolution. Begs the question, doesn't it? If evolution says we all came from a common ancestor, and you start with a human embryo or a human cell, and you make a human, what have you actually evolved into? Surely Larry knows evolution a little bit more than this. Interestingly, just a moment ago, you heard him say that he thinks the universe is eternal. He just kind of said it off the cuff. Folks, anybody that knows anything about hard science recognizes the fact that eternal matter is violating scientific laws. That would make it supernatural. And so maybe Larry and I are already at a point of agreement in that he thinks the universe is eternal and that it has always been here. He has a supernatural view of matter. On that one point, I guess we would agree. There is something out there that is supernatural. Ironically, though, I'm not going to let him off the hook that easily, because there have been two men, Edwin Hubble, Albert Einstein, who proved that, yes, this universe really did have a beginning, that it's actually expanding. If Larry will check very carefully, there's something called redshift. It's what we measure when stars are moving away. If you think about holding a sparkler, like for the 4th of July, and you wave it around and you see that trail, well, that's similar to what happens as a star is moving away. And we can measure that. Albert Einstein, Edwin Hubble, they've actually done some of those calculations to show that, yes, the universe is expanding, and thus it did have a beginning. Back to the hard science, Larry, I'm curious. You say that we need to be able to touch everything, feel it, measure it, prove it. What about human conscience, Larry? Do you have conscience? Because if you do, let me ask you, how are we to perform experiments using the scientific method? Interestingly, we're having a rational debate. So that begs the question, where did rational thought come from? How do you get rational from irrational? How do you get rational thought from some cosmic explosion? The bottom line is, he can. In fact, I want you to understand, from his own worldview, he can't even explain his existence. He would say that stuff is eternal, but that means he believes in the supernatural and he's willing to suspend all of these scientific laws. I would ask Larry this question. Have scientists examined 100% of the known universe? And by that I mean, he says that there is no God out there. But in order for him to make that claim, that means we would have needed to look all over the universe. Have we? In fact, Larry, can you say with absolute certainty, 100% certainty, that there is no God? What would you be willing to say, Larry? What is the percentage that there is no God? You see, the reality is, and this is what he doesn't want to deal with this evening, the reality is he and I both have to take a leap of faith. Now, he would say he believes in pure hard science, but in order to get his evolutionary theory going, he's got to take a leap of faith. That life came from non-life. That matter just came into existence or has always been here. Well, folks, let me tell you something. That's just as much a faith belief system as believing in a creator. And oh, by the way, we got a whole lot more evidence for a creator than we do just coming into existence from nothing. He did mention that his life has purpose. I want you to think about that for just a moment, because he spent some time talking about being dead. only bodies in which a component is eternal. That is, only bodies that have a spirit and go on after death. Realistically, those are the only ones that can have meaning, because otherwise, when you're dead like Rover, you're dead all over. But it takes a God in order to give an endless life. In other words, it takes a God to give a spirit. If there are no gods, there are no spirits. Thus, folks, lives have no meaning. I appreciated some of his introduction, talking about the cell, talking about reproduction, because I wanted to ask Larry, what about the origin of gender? You know, according to evolutionary theory, everything started with asexual reproduction. That is, something decides that it wants to reproduce, and it just quite literally splits in two. So how then do we explain sexual reproduction? In other words, how do you evolve testes, sperm, ovaries, uterus, fallopian tubes, the menstrual cycle, the egg cell? How do you explain all of this stuff? By the way, Larry, it's got to evolve all of those things while it's still asexually reproducing. And oh yeah, by the way, Larry, it has to do it in the same location at the same time. Now think about that for just a moment. You've got an asexual creature. He's splitting, and he's got to evolve all of these parts. Last question for you, Larry, as you're thinking about it. Can you give an example of a genetic mutation or an evolutionary process which can be seen to increase the amount of genetic information, increase the information in the genome?
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist in the museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever. Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist in the museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
I wanted to address what Brad Harrub said, that could I prove there is no God? Well, of course you can't prove a negative. I can't prove there's not a leprechaun or a unicorn. They may be hiding under a rock on one of the moons of Uranus. But I could say this. Einstein said, you know, a lot of preachers tell lies about Einstein and say he was religious. He said, in no way have I ever said there was a personal God. He said, the nearest I'd come to a God is my awe at the universe as revealed by science. It's like the lie that preachers tell that prayer was banned in schools after Madeline Murray O'Hare. Prayer was never banned in schools, folks. That's a preacher lie. They use it to stir you people out there in your churches up. How could you ban prayer? Any kid can pray silently as long as he's not ostentatious and making a big deal of it. But let me explain why the burden of proof for a God is on Brad Harrub. Let me repeat that. The burden of proof for a God is on Brad Harrub. Not for me to disprove it. You cannot prove a negative. You cannot prove a negative. Because, let me explain it. If you went to court, if you were a roofing contractor, and I said, well, you signed a contract with me to put a roof on my house this week, and I've got the receipt where I paid you $3,500 to put it on there. And you say I did not sign that contract, I did not give you a receipt, you never paid me. And we go to court, what's the first thing that judge is going to ask me for, folks? He's going to ask me for that contract and that receipt, isn't he? The burden of proof is on me, the one that says something exists. The burden of proof can never be on somebody that says something doesn't exist. And what if I said to the judge, well, Judge, you and that roofing contractor are just going to have to prove that contract and that receipt doesn't exist. Now, wouldn't that be stupid? I don't have to prove, but I'm going to tell you this. As I said, Einstein said about this maybe generalized, maybe there is some kind of force in the universe, but that silly, stupid God, that dimwit God that argued with Satan over Job and let Satan jerk Job around, that couldn't exist. He's jealous. I mean, here we know we've got a universe with 100 billion galaxies, each one with 100 billion suns. But this God in the Bible is so tiny, he made this little group of beings for his own amusement. He blew on dust and made it, and he's so jealous of them. And he kills people sometimes, like Uzzah. Uzzah was in care of the Ark of the Covenant or something. God gave his authority again, do not touch the Ark. And Uzzah's ox jumped back or something, and he put his hand on the Ark. God dropped him right in his tracks dead. I asked Johnny one time about the problem of evil. If God's good and loving and all-powerful, why do babies get born with terrible diseases in agony and die a few days later? And Johnny said, well, that's not God, that's Satan. And I said, aha! If God could drop us in his tracks, why didn't he kill Satan a long time ago? And you know what Johnny Robertson said to me? Man, this guy's funny. He said, because God doesn't have to do what Larry Surber says. God doesn't have to do what Larry Surber says. God doesn't have to do what Larry... I mean, what a weak, lame... If some Pentecostal holiness prophetess gave Johnny an answer that week, he would laugh in her face, and so would I. If Johnny said, well, you're putting on your hands, laying on your hands and healing a cancer inside somebody, demonstrate. You can't demonstrate it. All right, I want to talk about some verses in the Bible. Have I got them up there on the screen? I want you to copy these verses down so that you can look them up later so you won't think that I'm perverting Scripture. Johnny's accused me of perverting Scripture when I just tell him what a Scripture says. But anyway, the first one is Deuteronomy 25, chapter 25, verses 11 and 12. Two men get in a fight. The first man's wife comes to try to help him when he's been attacked. She accidentally touches the other man's private parts. What does God say? Cut her hand off and don't have any mercy on her. What a stupid, vengeful, brutal guy. The old God of the Hebrews, slaughter, kill all the other tribes, kill the children. Then go to Judges. Wait a minute. Yeah, if we can go to the next verse there on the screen. Judges chapter 11, verses 30 through 40. Can we get that up on the screen? Yes, okay. Judges chapter 11. It's supposed to be chapter 11. Wait a minute, maybe I've got another Judges here. It's supposed to be Judges chapter 11, verses 30 through 40. There's a guy named Jephthah, and he's out in battle, and he makes a deal with Yahweh, the God. If the Lord will deliver Ammon to him in battle, whatever comes out of his door first when he goes home, he will kill it, burn it, and make it an offering to the Lord. The Lord loves, he must have big nostrils and olfactory nerves because he loves the sweet smell of burning flesh. So, I mean, I don't know what this idiot Jephthah thought was going to come out of his door of his house because this was his only child, his beloved daughter. She came out. He sent her off for a while, but then he went ahead and killed her and burned her. Man, can you imagine burning your own daughter? It's like that idiot Abraham. God tells him to sacrifice Isaac. Man, if somebody told me to come and, if I did believe in a God, even a stupid God like this, and he said, you're going to have to kill your daughter who loves you and trusts you, relies on you. You think I'd kill her? I'd say, no, put me in hell forever, man. You punk. Some of you old ladies might better turn away from the TV because I'm going to be so blasphemous here. Now I want to go to Numbers 31, 15 through 18. I see Johnny's over there smirking at that. Numbers 31, 15 through 18. Okay, let me get out of the way. Okay, look at this one. Yahweh orders the Israelites to murder every Midianite man and little boy, murder every woman who's not a virgin. And you know what has Moses tell the people to do with all the little girls? Guess, folks. You know what God tells the great, good, kind God that's all-knowing tells Moses to do with all the little girls? Save them for fornication for yourselves. And that's a nice God, man. This is the God Brad Harrub and Jeffrey Rowe worshiping, so smirking about the science. I want to go now to 1 Kings 11:3. Have you got that up there? 1 Kings 11:3. Okay, get your Bible and look this one up. I hope you're writing these down. Religious fanatics insist that marriage is between one man and one woman. Isn't that right? They always say on this homosexual thing, marriage is one man and one woman. But who was one of the great heroes of the Old Testament, one of the patriarchs, old Solomon, David's son, King Solomon? Look up 1 Kings 11:3, and you'll find that Solomon had 700 wives for producing children, I guess, and 300 concubines just for his fornication pleasure. Man, he had it made. God just wants you to have one man and one woman. Luke, let's go to Luke 19:27. Can we pull that up? You know, in the Gospels in the New Testament, we've got old Luke. You know, you're always hearing about how cool and fine and good and gentle and peaceful Jesus is. But when I start talking about don't make war, because Jesus says love your enemies, Johnny turns to me and says, oh no. He says, I'm not a man of peace, I bring you a sword. And it just makes the Bible even more ridiculous and crazy. And in this particular case, after saying love your enemies, Jesus tells his followers, my enemies who will not allow me to reign over them, in other words, they don't accept my deity, bring them to me and kill them right before my eyes. Now, Johnny's going to say I perverted that scripture. That's exactly what Luke 19:27 is. He tells his followers to bring anybody that doesn't accept Jesus as their ruler and kill them. Now we go to Jeremiah 49:33. We go to Jeremiah 49:33. Have they got that up? Okay, we got it. Okay. And Hazor shall be a dwelling place for dragons, and a desolation forever. By the way, Brad Harrub believes we could have fire-breathing dragons because cows belch methane and some fish make sparks. And in his wild, crazy imagination, you could have fire-breathing dragons like in fairy tales. But anyway, and there shall no man abide there. Like many Bible prophecies, this never came to pass. Johnny, I will give Johnny thanks. His daughter spent a bunch of time making me a thick book that had a bunch of Bible prophecies. They're weak. They're too unspecific for a real scientist. They're just vague. But, okay, now let's go to Psalm 147, verse 4. This is a good one. Brad and Jeffrey Rowe will tell you, there's something in the Bible about the more stars than we could see. It would have been nice. It says he telleth the number of the stars. It would be nice if they'd said 10 sextillion stars, wouldn't it? I know Johnny can't read numbers that high. He told me he could only go up to about 1 trillion. Okay.
This program do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its employees, or ownership.
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
I want to start again by thanking Larry for encouraging you to read your Bible. However, I would encourage you to read those verses that he gave you in context, because realistically what he was kind of doing was cherry picking, and I think those of you who have read your Bible, you recognize that particular fact. Interesting to me,
Larry's getting awfully upset and worked up about a God he doesn't even believe in. Also interesting to me, where does Larry's view of morality come from? You know, he calls this God evil, and yet how is he able to discern what is good and what is evil? What is his standard for morality? We'll talk more about that next time. I did want to talk for just a few moments about the cell. Larry has shown pictures, and in previous debates, he's mentioned the cell, the inner workings. Three-dimensionally, when you look inside of a cell, it's phenomenal. It's off the charts complex. But once again, if we were to use his own words, if we were to use hard science to prove, to test, to measure, to see this thing, then let's do that. Let's evaluate his belief system versus mine. I believe in a God that created life. He believes in life that happens spontaneously. So we got to ask the question, how did we get a living cell from non-living material? Science has never answered that question. That's a leap of faith, Larry. Or how did that first cell come together? How did it self-assemble? Because you see, second law of thermodynamics says that things are moving towards disorder. And so again, that's another leap of faith, Larry. Third, what did that first cell eat? You know, when you start breaking all these things down, you've got, for instance, where all the proteins there already fully composed in the same area. What you're beginning to see this evening is not a man who has evidence to defend his belief system, but rather it's a man that's very upset. It's a man who doesn't want to bend a knee in obedience to a God, and ultimately it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. A lot of smoke and mirrors because, after all, they've never even told us how life got here. Oh, yeah, the textbooks will talk about the Miller-Urey experiment done in the 1950s, where these two guys put together what they thought were the early evolutionary conditions of life, and they zapped it with electricity. Most of those textbooks, however, don't talk about the fact that 85% of their product, what they actually got out was tar. And it also leaves out the fact that this experiment was done in the absence of oxygen, something that modern science realizes is totally irrational. So that brings me to a question. Yeah, if we were to take a test tube, like this one, and we put in this test tube normal saline, a solution that is perfect for cellular growth, and we were to put just a single cell in there, and then we took a pipette, sterile, of course, and we poked that particular cell, and all of the proteins, all of the organelles, everything comes out. My question to Larry is, and think about this, I'm actually giving him a jump start. In this tube, you would have everything you need for a cell. Everything. I mean, it's literally right there in the same area together. Could he put the cell back together for me? Could he shake this long enough? Could he put it under heat or pressure and actually make that cell come back together? Folks, the answer is no. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together. Now, think about that in terms of this primordial soup. Allegedly amino acids and stuff in this pond of... Folks, I'm willing to give him every single thing he needs in a test tube, all together in the same environment. And yet he can't get a living cell. And while we're talking about living cells, how about we explain this? He believes in a slow evolutionary process. How do you evolve blood clotting? If it's a slow evolutionary process, how many animals had to bleed to death before we figured out how to clot blood? Not just that. We don't just clot blood. We actually then take it one step further, don't we? We have to stop the clotting process. You see, Larry is somebody who believes in a billion-year-old Earth. He believes in a step-by-step evolutionary progression. And yet, if you think about what happens to things in hard science over time, they always go towards decay, disorder. We see it in nature. We see it you leave your car in your front yard for 50 years. What's it going to look like in 50 years? And yet, consider for just a moment, he believes in this long period of time. Begs the question, doesn't it? The more time you're adding, really the more chaos and disorder there should be. But folks, what evolution is saying is we went from an amoeba up to a man. It's going the wrong way. We're getting more complex. How in the world do you hold to the second law of thermodynamics that basically says everything is going towards disorder, and yet we're going, allegedly, from an amoeba to a man? Folks, the reality is time works against evolution. As you think about that, Larry, obviously, he can't explain the existence of the universe, but maybe he can explain design. He asked me for proof. He wants proof for a God. I could point to, for instance, the human body. We could look at the universe itself, because do we see design in the universe? Absolutely. Design demands a designer. You think about, for instance, the earth itself. What does it take to get a heavenly body in just the right place in space? The right rotation, the right tilt. Let me throw some numbers at him. He likes math, so let me throw the statistical odds of getting a heavenly body in just the right place in space. Like the right type of galaxy, the odds are 1 in 7. The right location within that galaxy. You know, we're in a spiral galaxy, not too far out on one of those arms. It's 0.05 to the 5th billion. The odds of being near the right sun is 1 in 100. That is the right age sun, one that's not flaming up or flaring out. Not only that, you've got to be the right distance from that sun. Add to that the right tilt, the right rotation rate. You add all of those numbers up, and what you're seeing here at the bottom of the screen, that is the statistical odds of getting a heavenly body in just the right place in space. Now, here's the funny thing. We still don't have life yet. We still got to add water. So are we really to believe that the Earth's atmosphere, the tilt, the rotation, the distance of the moon, the distance from the sun, the Earth's orbit, the placement in the galaxy, that's all simply a product of chance? Because, folks, listen to me. That sounds like an awfully big leap of faith for a man who says he believes in hard science.
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist at the museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
Before I move further, I want to remind you of what I started with, playing that clip of Brad Harrub laughing and grinning when the man said murder gaze. I don't want you to forget this man. He smiles and he talks about science. All these things he said about the conditions having to be just right, the position in the solar system and all those things are after the fact. We are here. We are here. This is called the Goldilocks effect. Not too hot parts, not too cold parts. But yeah, we're here. It'd have to have those conditions, but that's kind of absurd, I think. I'm going to do something now, and I hope Johnny and Brad will let me get away with it, because I'm afraid they're going to pull the plug on me or walk out, because it's going to seem sort of like that I'm not keeping this scholarly debate between gentlemen right, that I'm turning it into a farce and a spectacle. But I'm not. I'm doing a legitimate, scientific experiment. Testing whether Brad Harrub's faith in Yahweh and the Bible and Moses and all this stuff through Jesus and the resurrection of Jesus. Remember when Jesus arose, the ground opened up and all the corpses rose up and went into town and walked around. And that, let's see, what Bible verse was that? I don't remember which one that was. That was a real dumb one. It was seen by, corpses were seen by many people. You'd think a lot of the legitimate historians would have written about that, but they didn't. Anyway, this is not a farce. This is not like professional wrestling, if you bear with me. I want to do an experiment. I brought a couple of dumbbells here. I want to say that I'm a 68-year-old man. I'm an elderly man. Brad Harrub, I don't know how old are you, Brad? 42. Man, he's almost half my age, man. But even though I'm 68 years old, I'm willing to do an experiment to see how much our willpower. If you're a good guy and you're not, running wild outside the objective power of God and stuff, you give it all you've got. And I guess Brad will give it all he's got for his faith in God, and maybe he can prove something tonight. But I know I'm going to give it all I've got. I may drop dead of a heart attack because I'm going to do something with these dumbbells. And I'm going to do more than I've ever done in my entire life. I'm going to do more than I've ever done in my entire life because I'm going to be on the side of science and the joy of reality as exposed by real experiments where you measure things, observe things like Eratosthenes measured the earth carefully, the way Isaac Newton measured the acceleration due to gravity by carefully changing the position of a ramp until he got it up to a certain position, and he extrapolated up to 90 degrees to find that 32 feet per second. So I love science. So I'm going to do these dumbbells as many times as I can. Just get somebody over here to count for me. Billy Williams, he's my wife's former student. He'll count maybe. 1 up, 2, 3. Every time I come up with either hand, it's all right. And I'm going to do it as much as I can. Then we're going to get Brad to take off his sport coat and come up here. And he's going to do as many as he can. And this is my promise to you. This is no more ridiculous than Johnny and the Church of Christ offering $1,000 to anybody who can find the Baptist church in the Bible. If Brad beats me in the number he can do, I'm going to fall to my knees. I'm going to look up and say, oh, my God, you are real. I am so sorry I blasphemed you. And from now on, I'm going to devote my life to you. Plus, I'm going to sign a paper here tonight and get it notarized Monday to give $1,000 a year for the rest of my life to the church at 250 The Boulevard where my friend James Oldfield is pastor or preacher. I know they say, well, I don't have a church. Isn't that tedious and tiring? Every time somebody says your church, they say, I don't have a church. It's the Lord's church. Well, they're not saying, let's be real. Nobody's trying to say that Johnny stood on that rock with Peter or that Johnny bought the church or Johnny owns the church. They're just saying the church where you work. Let's let that go. That's tedious. Let that go. But anyway, I will do that. Now, what am I going to ask of Brad? Very simple. Nothing like what I've got to do. If I beat him and do more as a 68-year-old man, all I'm going to ask him to do is this. You ready? Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That's Aramaic. That's what Jesus spoke. He's on the cross, and since most of you probably don't speak Aramaic, I guess Brad and Johnny do, but Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That means in English, my God, why hath thou forsaken me? Isn't that a wimp thing for Jesus to say since God put himself in human form to come down here and do this, shed his blood for us, and then, he's crying out to his God like a wimp. That's just stupid. But that's all I'm going to ask Brad to do. I'm going to drop to my knees and change. I'm going to convert to Johnny's church. I'm going to start going to Johnny's church on Starling Avenue. I'm going to give $1,000 a year to the church where James preaches. You don't have anything to lose. All Brad's got to do, if he can't keep up with me, is just agree to just say, why have you forsaken me? Now I'm going to take off this. And get Billy Williams, if you will, to come up here and count. Will you do it? Will you be willing to count? No. He's shaking his head no. He doesn't want to count. What's your excuse, Billy Williams? Boy, aren't you Officer Edan of the Star Trek? Are you afraid, man?
Are you out of science?
What?
Are you out of science?
No, I'm not out of science. I got 1 billion years of science. I got plenty of science. But I'm going to do this. This is science because this is going to be a test of faith. All the people in the community are going, if this works, and Brad beats me, they're going to go to him. Is nobody going to count for me? Is there nobody in here that will you count for me, Johnny? No.
You must be out of science.
See, Johnny said he must be. He doesn't like this experiment, and you people out there are going to like it though. Billy Williams won't count for me. What's wrong with you, man? Will one of the boys over there, they your kids, Brad? Will one of them count for me?
They're all wondering where your science is.
I don't care about that, Johnny. I'm going to take my mic out here. I'm going to do this. This is science. This is a real experiment to test people that have a big mouth. So let's just do this thing. Pair of 60-pound dumbbells. I'm going to do as many as I can. Nobody in the room will count for me. I want that to go on the record. Nobody in the room will count for me. Johnny said, we're wondering where your science is. If you run out of science, will you count for me, Brad? No, you won't count? One? No, he was second into this. Oh, he's a bunch of cowards. I got a room full of cowardly men here. God, they're creeps. Okay, let's just go. You people on the TV can count. Is there anybody back in the back that can count? Okay. Most I've ever done. I did it for science. Okay, Brad, go for it, big boy. Take your coat off.
More science, bro.
You'll need to take your coat off.
More science.
You're not going to take your coat off and try it?
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist at the museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
Actually, I'm not going to lie to you. Definitely not going to do 50 of those. You know, if you think about it for just a moment, what I've learned tonight is if you can do math equations, weird, hard math equations, and if you're strong, then that means you are a pure, hard scientist. When it's not about exercising the brain, it's about exercising muscles. Well, folks, I'll go ahead and tell you. So far, I haven't really learned any pure, hard science. I do want to ask him a question, and starting out, that is, would he want to drink some hydrochloric acid? I brought a solution here, and I'll tell you, this is not hydrochloric acid. It's a solution that we made up just as a visual aid. I don't think Larry would want to drink that. And the reason that I don't think he would want to drink that is because it would eat the back of his throat. And yet, right now in Larry's body, especially now that he's kind of worked his blood up, he's got hydrochloric acid producing cells in his stomach, which kind of begs the question, which did he evolve first, hydrochloric acid producing cells or a container to keep it in? Now, obviously, you say, well, you got to have a container. You got to have a stomach that sheds its lining every couple of minutes. And folks, think about it for just a moment. In order for him to build up those muscles, he's got to be able to break down food. And you got to use, for instance, bile from the gallbladder, pancreatic enzymes, stomach acid, intestinal enzymes, all of these things. How is step-by-step evolution explaining that? My last segment with you during this 10 minutes, I want to very quickly talk to you about what happens when we don't believe in a God. What happens to the morals and characters of society? And I'm going to go through a timeline very quickly. People like Benjamin Rush who realize what happens when you take religion out of education. You see, about 50 years ago, we started removing God from our education system. It really, you could trace it back to about 1950. 1950 was when our government formed the National Science Foundation. Now, we could look at 1925, the Scopes monkey trial. But in 1950, they formed the National Science Foundation. 1959, just a couple of short years later, Eisenhower asked Congress for $1 billion. It was the 100th anniversary of Darwin's book to change the way we teach science. His advisors told him, teach evolution. Now, watch what happened right after that. That was in 1959. By 1962, we had outlawed prayer in our schools. Not just that, we had also outlawed Bible reading the very next year. Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Let me back up one. Madalyn Murray O'Hair, the famous atheist, basically saying, hey, we don't want Bible reading in there. So here's what I want us to do in our remaining time together. The same time we were removing creation and God from the classroom, we were simultaneously injecting a godless theory. And what happened to our nation? Like, for instance, what have been the results? You say, Brad, why does it even matter? It matters because what we think about where we came from alters how we believe, how we behave. If you think that you're just a cosmic explosion, you're going to act like that. If you think you were formed in the image and likeness of God, you're going to act like that. Abraham Lincoln said, the philosophy of the classroom in one generation will be the philosophy of the government in the next. In fact, another person, Hitler, he said, let me control the textbooks and I will control the state. Larry, I hope you're watching and I hope you're paying attention because I want you to understand what has happened now that we've taken God out of the classroom. Did we get, for instance, evolution in the textbooks? Yeah, we did. You see on the screen, I'm using 1963 as my landmark year, and here's why. 1959, Eisenhower asked for $1 billion to change the way we teach about our origins. It takes about 4 years to get it in the textbooks. By that time, we'd outlawed prayer. We had outlawed also Bible reading. So take a look at the screen. You'll notice, yeah, we got evolution in the textbooks, but you'll notice we also then started seeing other fruits. Like the percentage of teenage girls having premarital sex gone up in every age category since 1963. In fact, if you keep your eye on the orange bar, prior to that, we were still teaching people there's a God. You were created by God. After that, we've been telling people that you're just the fortunate mistakes of countless biochemical morons. Now, included with that, you've got, for instance, sexually transmitted diseases up 385% since 1963. Not just that, birth rates for unwed girls up 200% since 1963. Interestingly, pregnancies are actually up 553%. And you say, Brad, how can you do that? You got more pregnancies than you do births. Yeah, that would be because just a few years later, our nation passed Roe v. Wade. And now, a pregnancy does not equate a birth. How about this? Out-of-wedlock births as a percentage of all births has gone up every single year since 1963. And you say, so what, Brad? Who cares? Folks, when you take a dad out of the home, take a look at what happens. You got, for instance, 63% of the young people who take their lives, they're coming from homes without a father. 71% of high school dropouts are coming from homes without a dad. In fact, 85% of the young people in prison right now, as I'm talking to you, they're coming from homes without a father. Now, God had a plan for the family unit. How about this one? Unmarried couples living together, up 725% since 1963. Larry, you still feeling good about taking God out of the classroom? Because this is what's happened. It's not things that I'm making up. I'm not just pulling numbers out of thin air. These are actual data. And you say, but Brad, the population in this area has increased. And that's true, and that's why I've got this little white line here at the bottom. That's where we should be if we just go by population growth alone. We're off the chart, literally. Divorce has gone up since 1963. And you look at my chart and you say, now wait a second, Brad, it's tailoring off there at the end. Maybe things are getting better. Well, actually, folks, they're not getting better because our young people are actually just shacking up now. They're not getting married. How about this? Violent crime in the United States of America up 995%. Since 1963, Larry. In fact, let me read this quote to you. Most of Oakland Unified School District's 92 schools, the fight against crime and violence is unending. An Uzi semi-automatic rifle with 15 hollow point bullets was among the weapons confiscated by district officials within the last year. Franklin Elementary School, trying to ensure the students know to hit the ground when bullets fly, they carry out shooting drills twice a year. Shooting drills, folks. Suicide is up 253% since 1963. In fact, it has gone from the 12th leading cause of death in teens. It's now the 3rd. But nobody should be surprised. Because, folks, listen to me. When you take away God, you take away their hope. Child abuse up 2,300%. Illegal drug use is up 6,000% since 1963. Again, not made up numbers. I want to share with you very quickly what the real record is, what he doesn't want to tell you about what happens to a nation when you take away God. The United States has become the world leader in violent crime, divorce rate, teenage pregnancy, illegal drug use, and we got the highest illiteracy rate of any nation.
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever. Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
Okay, first, I'd like to just point out that Brad didn't even make a superhuman effort to win me over to God and get that $1,000 a year. I guess you saw he chickened out. I want that to be recorded in your minds. And secondly, didn't I tell you the preachers would tell that old Madeline Murray O'Hare taking the Bible out of schools a lie? What Madeline Murray did was get them to stop forcing, listen to me, forcing the kids to pray. Brad wouldn't want his kids, if he had to move to Muslim Nigeria, to be forced to bow toward Mecca and read surahs from the Quran. So it's a good thing not to force them. Now, Brad says, Murder rate up, guns in school, Uzis, teenage pregnancies out of control, drugs, yeah. But what happened back when they did force the kids to pray all the time? Black man could be murdered with impunity, but for whistling at a white woman and stuff like that. So I'd just like Brad to say why having the Bible in school back in those days worked so well.
All right, why the Bible works so well? Ultimately, the Bible is a moral code, and like it or not, almost every nation in the world views right and wrong very similarly. We look at things like stealing, rape, murder, all of these kinds of things we view as wrong. But in order for something to be wrong, there has to be a standard. Larry, most nations have adopted God's standard, His unchanging standard. You say, well, no, that's not true, that's not fair. Realistically, if you think about it, there's only two options. We either got our ethics from God or we got them from man. Now, you don't believe in God.
No,
at least I don't think I've convinced you yet.
No, you never will. It's absurd.
So, with that being the case, that means you're forced into the position of saying ethics, morals, came from man. So, which man gets to decide? Is it Hitler, Stalin, you name anybody that you would like to, is it Larry? Who gets to decide if ethics came from man? You see, the reality is, the reason why the Bible is such a big deal is because it is a standard for right and wrong. It's God's Word. And so, thankfully, in the old days, so to speak, we weren't afraid to look at it, read it. And by the way, all of those things that I mentioned, those all have gone up since we've taken the Bible out. Maybe we ought to look at that and realize, hey, it wasn't such a bad thing to have kids looking at this wonderful code of morals.
Oh, God, the slaughtering God.
Okay. Brad, you asking a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask him the question that I asked you during the debate, and that is, can you give the people there an example of a genetic mutation or an evolutionary process that can be seen to increase the information in the genome? And by that I mean, let me finish. In order for us to have come from some kind of an amoeba-like creature, evolving from some ape into man, let me back up here. Bottom line is, we would have had to add more DNA, more genetic stuff. So can you give us an example of that happening?
No, I'm not familiar with the specific biology of that. I would have to call on Richard Dawkins. I'd like to see you debate him on that.
Okay, whoa. Can I take the rest of his time on that then? Okay.
Wait a minute. I wanted to say something to respond to what you just said, man.
Okay.
You were saying this morality. You always give half the story. You and Jeffrey Rowe, you give half the story about Darwin, for example. He was a good man who hated the terrible treatment of blacks. He was an abolitionist. Darwin had something called empathy. Like, I've got empathy for a fish. I don't know if you fish. I know James Oldfield fishes. When I was younger, I was like Andy and Opie and Barney. My uncles took me fishing. Mm-hmm. I didn't think there was anything wrong with fishing. Now I know it's barbaric behavior because I can now have empathy for the fish. I don't know if you fish, but would you, I know you've had golden retrievers, would you take a big steel hook through a golden retriever puppy's mouth and drag him through a pond? Could you justify doing that?
I'm not sure why I would.
I'm just asking you, could you justify dragging a golden retriever puppy through the pond like a fish? Would you have any way to justify that ethically with what I'm talking about, empathy?
If that particular golden retriever was about to kill my child?
I didn't say anything about killing, just a normal golden retriever not threatening anyone. Could you justify that? Well, then how do you justify doing it to a fish? Do you know anything about the latest ichthyology of fish, or are you just limited to talking?
Let's see.
No, I asked
Larry?
you a question. Are you know anything about the latest ichthyology? Fish can suffer and feel. We can have empathy.
What about
for
ticks? Do you pick ticks
Yeah, I
off
killed the ticks and blackbirds. Just killed a copperhead last because they're a real threat. Is that golden retriever puppy a threat? No. You're twisting it. You're doing a Johnny Robertson slide.
Wait a second. Who says they're a threat?
The tick's a threat causes Lyme disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever. The copperhead could have bitten my dog, my wife, and my grandchildren. I didn't like killing the copperhead. He was kind of cute, but I chopped his head off because I didn't want him to hurt somebody. That's a threat. That's different. You're twisting it. That was a sorry answer. Just like you not even trying to do the double. You could have made a superhuman effort and done something for God. You didn't even try. Coward. What a coward.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. So I did.
You know, I asked you the question about adding genetic information. You said you'd want to refer to Richard Dawkins.
Or someone
And
that's a real
let's
molecular
listen to what
biologist.
he said when he was asked the same question. Do we have the video going?
I've read stuff like this, but I can't recall it right off the top of my head that there is some other explanations for that.
Can you just stop? I think there's a popular misunderstanding of evolution which says that fish turned into reptiles, and reptiles turned into mammals. So somehow we ought to be able to look around the world today and look at our ancestors. We ought to be able to see the intermediate between fish and reptiles.
Okay. Next question. How much certainty are you that there is no God?
So close to 100% you couldn't imagine. I told you, your God's a fool, a buffoon.
So 99, 98?
Oh, no, way 99.999999999%.
Why wouldn't it be 97?
Because I find it so ridiculous, as I told you earlier, that you would have a man like God. He's so like this thing that can make 100 million galaxies with 100 million suns, acts like a silly little man that wants to be worshipped. He's jealous. He hurts people that don't obey him. His authority.
You're willing to tell the
I'm
people
willing to
out
tell
there
the people out
that
there
there is
that
a 0.01%
No,
chance
not nearly that high.
Oh, okay.
I'd say the chance that there is some type of God like, of some type of something that's started the universe and running it's maybe down to 0.0000, but the kind of God you've got, this man like God, I don't know, that's just, I want it to be big. Okay. But I'm just saying that the kind of God you've got, this Yahweh, strutting around, acting like you'd have to be a child and a fool to believe in a God like that. Nothing can make a universe so big and so fast and act so much like a man. It's clear that the Bible writers, very ignorant, desert wandering men, and that's why they're so against women. That's why women get the patriarchs, they always thought they could sell their wives and daughters, and then that crazy nut Saul, after he became Paul, went blind on the road to Damascus, sort of putting women down in second place, and now in Johnny's church, they can't stand up and question things. It's a horrible God.
You admit, though, we haven't searched the entire universe?
I said there might be something, even a unicorn hiding under a rock on a moon of Jupiter.
So there may be something out there.
Not like your God. That's impossible.
Why?
Because I just told you, can't you understand? It's like a Mighty Mouse comic book. Your God's a buffoon character made up by dumb men. Some of the dumbest men in the Bronze Age wandering dead. Only a stupid idiot would believe somebody would try to, they're going to build a tower to Babel as God's worried about them getting up there, or this argument between Satan and Job, all of it. Putting curiosity in Eve and then having a talking serpent. You're a biologist and an anatomist. Do you think a serpent could have vocal cords and talk to Eve? It's all childish fairy tales. It's myths. You don't have any myths about dust mites either. Why don't you have any myths in your Bible about dust mites? Because they didn't know they existed. You got millions of them in your house. But silly, crazy stuff.
I would point out that mean-spirited God you just mentioned.
The one that made you laugh about murdering a homosexual,
sent his son.
His son. What was his son?
Die for you.
Was he? No, he didn't die for me, man. You say that he had a son. You got this Father, Son, Holy Ghost. What in the world is a Father, Son, and a Holy Casper, the Friendly Ghost? That's meaningless. He was God, and then he put himself in a human form and came down so he could die, and then he cried out to God. And there were several different things that are one thing. That's stupid. That's stupid. That's just so stupid it makes me sick. You guys, you and all of you guys like you make me sick, man. Because you're liars. You tell half the truth. You tell half the truth about Darwin. He was a racist. No, he loved the black people, and he hated slavery. He was a staunch abolitionist back before there were abolitionists. He had empathy for them. Crazy stuff. Man, it's crazy.
I think it's your turn to ask a question now.
Okay.
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you. Why not? Under any conditions ever.
The views expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its employees, or ownership.
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you. Why not? Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you. Why not? Under any conditions ever. Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you. Why not? Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you. Why not? Under any conditions ever.
I think we would both love to go back and forth a little bit more with questions, but they tell us that they're going to open up the phone lines and take questions from you all. So if you have a question you want to call in, whether it be to me, whether it be to Larry, to both of us, we'd love for you to call. There's a number there at the bottom of the screen. Pick up the phone, join in the debate. The existence of God. Is he real? Is he not? Is he mean-spirited? Is he a loving God that sent his son to die for us?
Oh, man.
We invite you to call now. As we're waiting on calls, Larry, if you've got a question that you want to ask, or if you want me to ask you one, I know we both had questions we wanted to get to.
I've got about 4,000 questions. I want to say one thing. You and I do agree on astrology. We both hate astrology and think it's silly, right? Don't you? I think you've said that.
I think the heavens declare the glory of God.
But no, you said the science of astrology and horoscopes was just silly. You said
horoscopes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, we agree on that because do you realize, of course, there are no constellations, right? You know that. You know enough astronomy to know there's no constellations.
Can I get you to hold that and we'll go to this first caller? All right, you are live on the air.
Hey, I was going to say something to that Surber there. I just want to tell him he's really ignorant, and he's just making himself look so stupid on the TV.
Can you work a differential equation, sir?
And he thinks he's bad, but he's not. He's uneducated. He just don't have no sense. He's very uneducated, and he needs to get off there. And I think Johnny ought to just throw him off right now. And I'm for Johnny. I don't think he can do it.
I think Johnny just ought to throw him off there right now. I know everything. Can you work a differential equation? Can you do 48 60-pound curls?
Let me encourage everybody to be nice. How about that? Hello, you are on the air.
I would just like to see Mr. Larry show one evidence of anything to prove evolution.
We've got the fossil record. Today, in the paper, they came out with the complete fossil. Johnny and Brad would say, oh, they find one bone and then extrapolate the whole skeleton. That's not the way it usually works. We've got complete skeletons. We've got transitional forms. In Richard Dawkins' book, The Greatest Show on Earth, he says, missing link. What missing link? And he's got a whole chapter on called Right Before Our Very Eyes, where E. coli bacteria evolved. What about when we have a group on a mainland and somehow they get separated off onto an island for a long time and they come back, they can't even mate because they're not of the same species. They formed a new species. That's just like the Osborne Church over here says, well, our preacher, whatever his name, Pastor Steve says, well, you don't see bluebirds mating with redbirds and making purple birds. That's his excuse for not letting black men and white women or white men and black women mate and marry. Well, that's so stupid because that shows they don't understand the term of species. Species means you can mate and reproduce. A redbird and a bluebird can't mate, but a black man and a white woman can. That old redbird, bluebird, purple bird thing is stupid. There's an enormous. Why don't you read some Richard Dawkins books? It's enormous amounts of evolutionary evidence to the transitional forms, and it happens. We started out the first 3 billion years of life on Earth is all one-celled.
I would point out that Lucy, Strelopithecus afarensis,
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds,
is the most complete that we have, and that is far from being a complete fossil missing link.
Are you kidding? Did you read this? Here's a complete skeleton.
I will be happy to read this. We are going to take another call. Hi, you're live on the air.
I am.
You are.
Hello.
Hello.
Go ahead.
I have to ask a question.
Go. Mute your TV, please. You're getting the feedback.
I am.
You can't call into these shows without muting your TV. You won't hear anything.
Go ahead with your question.
My question is for Larry. How come he can't explain anything that Kyle Butt through Adam?
I'm sorry. How come I can't explain anything through atoms?
Kyle Butt, I don't know what he's talking about.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Atoms, molecules, things combining to make compounds?
Why can't you explain, Larry? Is this Larry who I'm talking to?
Yes, so you're talking to Larry Surber, the notorious Antichrist. That's what they call him.
Okay. Yes. How can you not explain?
How can I not explain?
Cannot explain anything that Kyle Butt has thrown at you.
I'm not Kyle. I do know Kyle.
Yeah, I understand that.
How can I not explain? What are you talking about?
Have you debated Kyle?
No, I don't know Kyle.
Okay. We're going to go to another caller. Thank you.
Guy's not able to lose. He needs to elucidate.
Hi, you're on the air.
Or we can comprehend.
Hello?
Hey.
I'd like to tell Larry Surber something I seen on a science program on Channel 4 last night. These scientists was looking in this desert for dinosaur bones and human bones. And this woman scientist, somebody hollered for it. She went running over there, all excited, picked up half of a jawbone with a tooth in it, put it up to her jaw, and declared it was a woman, teenage woman that was born 60 million years ago. And all she had was one tooth and a piece of bone.
Sounds ridiculous.
She put it to be a girl, teenage girl born 60 million years ago.
That's ridiculous. That's not.
Explain that, big scientist.
I can't explain that. It sounds ridiculous. It's not nearly enough information. That's not the way scientists work. Have you ever seen Brad and Jeffrey's Ica stones? They got all these stones that show people with dinosaurs, and now it's pretty likely those were frauds. It looks like some of the natives sold them to gullible tourists, and they're modern. They got a lot of phony information. Like, I don't know about this woman with one tooth and a bone and said it was a teenager. That's not science. I don't know what you're talking about.
I would point out the Ica stones he's talking about, there have been people trying to make money off pretty much everything, any kind of scientific discovery, but the real ones that were found in tombs, those were real.
No, they're not real, because in a nearby, at the same time frame, in a nearby place, they've got these famous Nazca paintings or something, not a dinosaur in them, man. Come on, man.
I can actually show you. You're on the air.
Go ahead.
Hi. Hello?
Hey, we're here. Go.
Hi. I am a mechanical engineering student, and I can work a differential equation.
Oh, can you? Would you like to work one for us?
How that's relevant to the conversation.
would you like to work a differential equation, one of these power formulas for us?
I can't right now over the phone.
Oh, you can't right
if
now.
I could do it in a board, yes, I can.
Would you come over here and we'll put it up on a chalkboard with magic markers and get you to do it?
What's your question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how it's relevant to the conversation. Not that I can or can't.
Because
but
if you look in
how is it relevant?
if you look in the encyclopedia about differential equations, it's not just for mechanical engineers like me and physicists. It says biologists, modern biologists use differential equations. Differential equations are about how you see varying things accelerating together over time. Like your gas mileage of your car is 30 miles per gallon at 30 miles an hour. But when you get up to 70, it might not be but 14 miles per gallon. And all along the continuum, we see how these rates of change are. This is the kind of thing
How does that weigh into whether there's a God?
That doesn't weigh into where there's a God, but if you're supposed to be such a great biologist, Johnny said you were my superior in every way. You're certainly not my superior in curls, and I don't believe you're my superior in math. Johnny made the statement, and he's going to lie about this probably, but he made the statement that you were my superior in every way. I just said, can you work differential equations? That was just one of a million things I could have said. Now, that doesn't enter to God, but I just thought it was an interesting point since you were so brilliant and I was so illiterate. You were so bombastic, and I was just so stupid.
Thanks for your call. Hello, you are on the air.
Am I on the air?
You're on the air, go.
This is Brad.
It is.
Brad, it's good to talk to you again, my friend. Listen, I was listening to this debate here and really kind of confused by the anger of the other guy.
Because I hate religion swamping us, making people crazy, and preachers hypnotizing kids. Thomas Edison said religion's all bunk, but they get to the kids when they're 6. Brad's talked about the schools indoctrinators. What's more indoctrinating than getting little kids and teaching them about Jesus and God and all these other fairy tales? That's why I'm angry. I'll lose it when people like him get so smug and, oh, Jesus died for your sins. Where's Jesus? You can't demonstrate anything. Can't demonstrate anything, man. And you always got that first century arm. God doesn't do miracles like he did in the first century.
Listen here, Brad. As I recall, I know you guys haven't covered dinosaurs. There's so many things you guys did not cover.
There are. I've got millions of things here.
Weren't there some fossils that had a foot of a dinosaur plus a foot of a human?
No, that's fake. That's bogus.
You're talking about the tracks down in Glen Rose.
I believe that's right.
No, we've never found dinosaurs and humans in the same strata.
They were actually discovered together. Now, I will to Larry's credit, I will say this. There was a creationist that added additional human tracks, but the original find, definitely had a human print inside.
What about the soft tissue? You guys found that some scientists said that they found soft tissue in the bones she was doing, and
Mary Schweitzer.
That's been completely debunked, man. Where are you? Johnny doesn't believe they ever transplanted a baboon heart into a human. Are you so behind you don't know that Schweitzer
proteins out of T-Rex bones?
Yeah, but I mean, this was soft tissue. Haven't you seen that's been debunked in things like Free and Clear magazine and even Science
Hey,
and
Brad,
Nature?
you're doing a good job, brother.
He's doing a great job, man. You love him. You already, a priori, love him.
All right, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a scientific, biblical question.
Okay.
I wanted to know, has it ever been...
Go ahead.
We've lost you.
Are you there? Hello.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
I wanted to know, has it been ever proven scientifically or biblically that God speaks to the body or soul once it's completely dead? Like for one final question or request.
This is Jaquita, right? I've heard you call in many times to recognize your voice. Aren't you the one that said you had to put out detergent and bleach to get all the demons off your porch and steps? So you're going to believe a lot of weird zombie stuff.
I'm not sure.
Oh, no. I'm just saying,
I'm not sure.
I actually live in, it's been here ever since like the 1950s. And it has never been like clinically cleaned. And I had just washed my porch. And ever since then, it kind of gave me some type of self-relief.
Let me share with you very quickly. The Bible does talk about when a person dies, the spirit returns to God who gave it. Now, as far as questions and things
there's no proof
like that,
for it. There's no evidence for it.
There is going to be a day of judgment where we're all going to give an account.
You're not going to have a day of judgment. Your brain's going to disassemble and you're gone.
Will bow. So,
right, but what I was asking was, like, do you believe that even if he
unfortunately, we're going to have to take a hard break right here.
Well, the Bible's not a history book. Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
That paleontologist in the museum may not be as educated as you think he is. I don't really consider him the big man.
It should be important to the community here that they get the truth. And by that I mean, you know, science is a pursuit of knowledge. Surely, of all places, this place is going to show the truth. It's going to show true knowledge.
Sir, I'm not going to have this debate with you.
Why not?
Under any conditions ever.
I would like to reiterate that even though Brad Harrub has a PhD, which I always used to call Pile Higher and Deeper, calls himself a doctor, I don't think you really ought to call yourself a doctor on your stationery and your business cards unless you're a medical doctor seeing patients or you're a dentist or something. But that's just a matter of taste, I guess. But anyway, I think when you have an a priori assumption, as I said earlier, that it's all from God and it's all divinely inspired, you can't do the scientific method, which is wide open, looking in 360 degrees in all directions. I don't believe that. Another thing, Brad and his friends say that there were a lot of scientists who were very religious. They only tell half the story, though. They don't mention there were a lot of scientists who were skeptics. I mentioned earlier Thomas Edison said all religion is bunk, but they get kids early. What about the greatest botanist? Surely Brad knows the greatest botanist I know of was Luther Burbank. He despised religion worse than I do. He said, I'll have nothing to do with a fiendish God that sends people to hell forever. No chance of time off for good behavior. I think that's just really, really insane. I was getting ready to say earlier that Brad and I do agree about horoscopes. People that believe in astrology are really scientifically illiterate. There's no such thing as a constellation like Orion the Hunter and his belt or the Big Dipper, because that's just from our perspective on Earth. If you go out in the side, you'll see that this star's way up here, trillions of light years away, and this one's trillions of light years away. They're not really a group, a thing in space. I want to say this. When I was in engineering, mechanical engineering at NC State University, I had professors who were always saying, try to make it impossible for people to misunderstand you. In other words, write legibly. We learned lettering techniques. Speak in a clear language to your audience. And when I was teaching school, I always tried to use language my kids could understand. I tried to put Archimedes' principle into terms of going into the bathtub and the water rises, or sitting on a seesaw and the person rises. Be clear. That's my thing. Let's be clear. Let's not hoodoo anybody.
I want to thank Larry for his time tonight, for being here. Appreciate you very much. I do hope that he will continue to study and look at the evidence. You know, tonight we looked at the fact that matter exists. And his worldview can't explain where the matter came from. We looked at the fact that morals do exist. And the only logical explanation is that we've adopted God's unchanging standard. We looked at the fact that design exists. And as a result, we've got design in the universe, we've got design in the human body. That was an area that I wanted to get to, and obviously because of time restraints wasn't able to. But you look at all of the design in the human body pointing back to a designer. The reality is it's not science versus the Bible. Larry wants to pit the two against each other. The reality is God is the author of science. True science points back to him.
False science all the way.
And I would really encourage anybody out there who is searching, anybody who wonders whether or not there really is a God, look at the evidence around you. Look at things like the design in plants, the design in animals. Ask yourself simple questions like, where did the universe come from? Because when you do that, what you're going to realize is evolution, this idea that there's a big bang doesn't have the answers that you're looking for. There is something that does have the answers, and let me encourage you. Look at it, read it, get into it. The reality is, you know, tonight, Larry, I know he threw out some Bible verses and was kind of cherry picking, so to speak.
If the Bible's
I didn't talk about the Bible that much. And I didn't do that because, quite literally, this was supposed to be a debate on the existence of God. If maybe in the future, one day we will debate the Bible, but the reality is when you read this book, what you find out is that there is an awesome God, a God who had a plan from the beginning for man, a God who created us in his image, his likeness. You're there for a purpose. Let me encourage you to seek out that God, to find that God, because it's only that God that is going to love you enough to send his son to die for you. I realize
burn
that
most of you in hell.
realize that Larry disagrees with that. The reality is all men have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God according to the Bible. I'm very thankful that he did send his son for a sinner like me. Appreciate very much your attention tonight. Appreciate you watching What Does the Bible Say? And again, I appreciate Larry for his willingness to come on and to discuss whether or not there really is a God. You know what the evidence says. He's real. He's out there. Thank you so much for watching.
Who made God?